Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. My name's Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
And I'm LouiLou, and my pronouns are he and him. I am recovering for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am always in search of balance. And each week we strive to create a brave space where we can talk about topics of recovery. Yeah, discuss topics of recovery.
That's good. Yeah, we're still doing. Yeah, and our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
Yes, but before we do that, please like, share, comment, and rate this episode.
Rate this episode.
Rate
and
it.
ding that bell. Ding, ding, ding. And now the disclaimer. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on At the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. The material and information shared here is for general information purposes only. In other words, we're just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you.
Absolutely. And at the end of that disclaimer, and of course you might die. Oh, wait, you might be unalive.
Might
Sorry.
lead to, well, we're not. Well, apparently, you only have to adopt that language if you're monetized, because they can take your money away from you, or they could take you off the platform altogether. But we have a friend with us today.
We do.
And what is our friend's name? Her name is Bernadette. Bernadette, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very
happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yes, thank you.
So let's do our hellos and how are yous.
How are you? How are you?
Louis, thank you for asking. I'm actually doing really. I'm well. I'm doing good. Something new that I started to do is I've been cutting sugar out because I have too much sugar, a lot of sugar. Brandon is shaking it. I eat so much sugar. It's really bad.
I was thinking you had too much sugar in a different way.
No, sugar in my tank. Sugar in my tank. Yeah. And so I'm acutely aware of the fact that I'll be turning 40 this year, that diabetes runs in my family, all of that stuff. And so I've started to be really mindful of it. And it is I'm going through withdrawals. I didn't know you could withdraw from sugar, that they're real symptoms.
Really? No?
Yeah, there's I didn't know there's there's irritability, mood swings, it messes with your sleep cycle. You have foggy brain, and all of those things are true. So yeah, that's a new thing that I'm doing because
That's good. It's how you're doing it now. So.
Yeah, and I just a good friend of mine just found out that two good friends just found out that they're diabetic, and so it's starting to feel very real for me.
Absolutely, and I had the same thing. One of my friends, and I was thinking, well, this person's active and blah blah and all that good stuff, and it is. I'm coasting on God's grace.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
We all are.
Yeah, exactly. I'm good. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I was getting there.
God. No, actually things are good. It's I have been doing this thing where last week I tried to get to a meeting a day. Cause I've been doing this thing where it's I find myself at home being lazy, and I don't have any reason not to, so why not do it? It's and it's a great way to kind of stay connected, and feel like a part of. And so I've been really good.
I love that. How about you, Bernadette? What have you been up to these last couple of weeks?
Well, you heard a little bit about it. I just had total knee replacement surgery, so that was a wild ride. That was about 2 weeks ago now, and it had its ups and downs for sure. I've had someone that I'm checking in with the whenever I'm taking any sort of heavy narcotic, how much I'm taking, how often, and I'm doing that all the time, every time I take one, because it scares me. I definitely was someone who loved to pop pills and smoke some pot, and just sort of coast out. So I've been really vigilant with that. And I think that it's really helpful to have someone sort of watching over me and
that's super responsible. That my last relapse was over pills. That
scares me.
Yeah. I would keep the pills around, and then someday I was fuck it. And then I
love that. In a couple of months, we're going to have a very detailed conversation about that. But medication recovery.
Yeah, medication and recovery. It's like a real thing. It's like one of those things that not a lot of people talk about, but there's a lot of relapse around medications.
Absolutely.
They can get real slippery.
This misconception or idea that, like, if I go through something like what you're going through or whatever, I can't take medication. That's nonsense. I have a doctor.
Right. Yeah.
I have a doctor and a relationship with a doctor. And also, it's like, I'm a punk.
Yeah. Well, okay, you know what's really interesting about that is that I always knew I liked pills. I didn't realize how much I liked them. So there was this one time I was out with friends and I'd taken one. I don't remember why, but I remember thinking to myself in the same way when I had my first drink, I'm like, oh my God, I could live like this.
Oh, absolutely.
Like what? Like it was like a hydrocodone or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, I just love everyone. And I feel so connected to people. And I'm like, why don't we all take this all the time?
That's awesome.
Yeah. But, along those lines. So today's topic is body positivity. And I thought to bring Bernadette on because we had a couple of conversations. Well, it all started because I noticed that she had buttons on her bag and there were all these very like body positive buttons. And I thought, oh shit, like she's like really representing this idea that I know actually very little about. Like I know about it in kind of like a cursory way, but yeah, that's the extent of it. And so I thought we would bring Bernadette on. Do you know by memory the different buttons that you have on your bag?
Yeah, I made them myself. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I tried to find buttons that had the things I wanted to say, and they didn't really exist. So I made them myself. I got the little button, crusher thing, and made them.
I love that. Yeah.
So yeah, one is 97% of all diets fail.
Okay.
So that's a statistics that's over like 3 to 5 years. So like long-term weight loss over a long period of time. And then one of the other ones is without fat, we wouldn't have booty.
I'm not mad about that. Yeah.
And then, of course, I had to give boobs a nod too. So I did the same thing with boobs. And then I have one on there. It's not exactly about body positivity, but it's from Dr. Jen Gunther, who wrote the Vagina Bible. And she's amazing. And one of her little sayings in her book, which I just love, is your vagina is a self-cleaning oven. So
I love it.
I love it. And it is about, your body too. So it's all those kinds of things that I have on my bag. And the reason I put them on there was because I wanted other people who maybe feel like they don't fit in the mold to see those and think, see, it's okay. Like I can just be myself.
Absolutely.
Because I know that things like that help me too.
Yeah. And I love the mentioning of the vagina quote. Because that's actually something that like some people do have shame around their like genitalia, like be it a guy or whatever someone's genitalia is, that there are, I didn't realize that this was an issue with like vaginas until I saw this book and it was like all vaginas are beautiful and it was like a bunch of pages and I was like, oh wow, like this is like an example of like my not knowing what might be happening for like a certain group of people.
Well, it's not your experience. So
it's not my experience. But I love that. I love that as like an incorporation that it isn't just like the stuff that people can see. It can also be the stuff that some people can't see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, only a select few get to see that.
Yeah. Well, it depends on who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it depends on who you are.
There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong if you let a lot of people see.
Yeah. Some people, that is their moneymaker.
Hey.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's okay too.
Maybe that should be a series.
Yeah.
Like we'll get back to that.
Yeah,
so,
we'll get back to it.
Okay.
So like I said, I have a cursory understanding of like body positivity. So can you tell us a little bit about like what it means to you and like how that's developed over time?
Sure. So I think a big shift for me was when I moved because I've been in the Bay Area my whole life, but I moved into the city of San Francisco about 8 years ago.
Okay.
And I moved because my entire life changed. My relationship imploded. Everything changed. And I basically changed everything. So I had to start from scratch. And I remember thinking like, I am so tired, sick and tired of fighting against this body that is here to stay. Like I am done trying to put my curvy little ass into a size 10 jeans. It's not going to happen.
Okay.
And you know what? If it does, it's going to not be because I did it. You know, it's like, it's not going to be something I consciously did. It's like, this is my body. This is how it is. This is what I've been fighting against and doing yo-yo diets my whole life. And I'm not doing it anymore. By the way, yo-yo diets are awful for your body. Just FYI. And so I just had this moment of clarity, almost like the clarity that I had when I first got sober. It's like, I'm not going to try and fight against what my body is and how it exists in this world anymore. I'm done doing that. And so I started following all these body positive people on Instagram. I bought, several books about body positivity and body acceptance, and just sort of immersed myself in that thought process. And it took some time, because even immersing myself in those thoughts and relating to a lot of the things I was reading, it was still really difficult to unlearn all of the commentary that is everywhere, social media, magazines, TV, that tells you, especially as a woman, I know as a man too, there are expectations as a man, but as a woman, we're like supposed to be this like tall, blonde, size 0, big boobs, doesn't matter if they're fake, like, just, you're supposed to fit this mold. And I'm never going to fit that mold. And the one time I got close enough to that sort of mold was when I was doing extreme dieting, and I wasn't eating sugar or flour. I was only eating a certain amount every day. And who can sustain that? No one can. That's why diets don't work, because it only lasts for as long as you do it on the regular, and I just don't think that's very sustainable.
Do you have there's so many rich things here. Do you have an opinion about these medications that are becoming really popular, like Ozempic?
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw something about that today, and I have heard about it, and it's something that I have thought about, and it's sort of intriguing, but also I don't want to think that there's like this silver bullet. There's like this one thing that's just going to solve all of it, because body positivity and body neutrality is so much bigger than that. It's, if you want to change your body, that's fine. That's your choice. And if you want to take some of these meds, that's absolutely fine. And you know what? I'm not anti the meds, but I just don't know enough about them to feel like that's something that I would want to do for myself. And particularly because now that I've gotten the knee surgery, hopefully that will mean that I'll be able to walk more and do more and be out and just be active. And I think for me, my body acceptance is really about feeling strong and feeling self-sustained. It's not about what size I am. It's about, the strength of my body and what I can do with it.
I love that. Yeah. And you're making me think about, there's a difference between what it means to be, well, first off, thank you for all of that. I mean, there's so many different things that we can talk about, and hopefully we'll get to all of them, or at least most of them. But I love this idea of not fighting what is, right? That a person can be beautiful in whatever body that they're in, and that a person can accept their body in no matter what body they're in. And there's also this difference between healthy versus what's appealing to other people. Right. Which is, I think, what you're getting at, to feel strong, for example, is a very different barometer than, I am now looking like the example you gave was the blonde,
size 0,
that kind of person. And I wanted to say a little bit too about how, that might apply to men, which is really interesting because the pressure has been on women since the beginning of time, and within the last maybe 10 or 15 years, maybe even more than that, there has been this slow objectification of male bodies, especially I think with gay men. I think if you look at gay media in particular, and to support this idea of it being around gay men, you have, having eating disorders among gay men are actually quite high. Right. And it's in either direction. It's either getting on steroids and going in that direction, or under eating, etc. Louis, did you have something?
No. I'm just listening.
Yeah. So, and you know, I think, and there's so many different factors that contribute to that, right? So, what do you think are like where do you think the different messages come from?
I mean, for me, I just remember as a young girl, my experience was, before we sort of had the internet explosion and social media, it was just standing in line in the grocery store and looking at the magazines, all the magazines, right? And I remember thinking to myself, God, can't there be one magazine with a woman that looks like me or a young girl that looks like me, who's chubby and curvy and is like sort of a tomboy? Can't there just be one magazine like that? And there never was, for the longest time. And it was just the same sort of woman over and over. And I just think that image has just been seared into my mind and seared into so many people's minds of like, this is the ideal. And, only I think something like maybe like 1% to 5% of women actually have that body type that they could even achieve that goal. And so it's just, I think that for me was the place that it really started. And I think it's different for everyone, especially with, technology moving so fast. It's like with social media, I know that there's a lot of teenage depression about like feeling insecure about their bodies and thinking they should look a certain way, and all these filters that people are putting on them that make them look like they're not even people, and feeling that like that's how they should really look, so it changes, I think, every generation. But that for me was really where it started.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so much. So, there's one of the, I don't want to lose our momentum, but I realize we never asked you our 3 questions.
Because we dove.
Oh yeah, I know. I thought about that.
We're all
right
excited.
in.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
But I don't want to lose our momentum around the media. So let's just go to the 3 questions just quickly.
Okay.
Because it's just 3 minutes for 3 questions.
And
go
honestly, in what you talked about, she kind of answered some of it. So it's like, it'll just be like a reiteration.
Yeah. So the first one is, where are you from?
Okay, so Bay Area. I've been in California my whole life. I grew up in the, white suburbs, a little bit south from here. Very old, very white. That was my youth, and didn't really feel like I fit in there a lot of the time either. So yeah, and then I moved here, like I said, about 8 years ago to San Francisco itself.
Nice.
Oh, cool. And
What brought you kicking and screaming to recovery? I modified it a little.
The short and sweet answer of that is my parents were a freaking mess. They were both addicts and alcoholics. They showed me the life that I never ever wanted.
Yeah.
And I resisted and resisted and resisted. And then when I turned 18, like some kid told me, some like cocky boy told me, this teenage boy told me, you're going to flip a switch one day and that's going to be all gone. And it was true. It was like, flip the switch and I was just off and running. So I think, the resistance and then seeing the life that my parents had created and just not wanting my life to be like that, and seeing very clearly, if I didn't change something, this was going to be it. This is going to be like my little tunnel life. It was going to be just getting loaded. Nothing else matters until the end of time, until I was done, and I didn't want that.
Yeah.
nice. Do you want to ask the last one?
No.
What's your relationship with your higher power?
Oh man, that's been a hard one from the start. I mean, not to get into too many details, but I grew up in a Italian Catholic family. Catholicism has its wonderful points. It also has some awful points, in my opinion. And, growing up with this sort of punishing God, and then also being queer and being, sort of outside of that because of that, and asking questions that never really got answered to my satisfaction, sort of created this really difficult resentment in me with religion and spirituality. But, over the last 20 years of recovery, I've really learned a lot, and I've changed how I think about higher power now. And for me, like, my higher power is more about the power of nature and the power of like the ocean. I can go to the beach and just watch the ocean for, an hour and feel so much peace because it's out of my hands. I can't do it. I don't make the waves. I don't make the gravity that makes the waves. Like, it's not my job. And so I think there's something really freeing about that, and Yeah. So that's sort of where I'm at with it now. It's very different than when I first came in.
I love that. So let's go back to social media. So, and like media in general. So I can relate to this. I can remember when I was a young boy, all I saw as models of excellence were like blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guys. And I can remember thinking to myself, I can remember I went through this period where I absolutely hated myself because I was like, I don't look like that. My hair doesn't look like that. My skin doesn't look like that. And then I remember when I came out and I was looking at like all the gay media, and to some extent, you know, this still exists this way too, where it's like what you see are a lot of white bodies, right? This kind of like sexualization and idealization of white bodies. And then when I have seen like bodies of color featured, it's always been like the exception. It's always been like it's fetishized in some way, right?
Absolutely.
You know, and so like that's one of the, so body positivity and like body acceptance and self-acceptance, it took me a very long time to get around to like, oh, actually, no, I don't have to look like this thing in order to love myself or to feel valuable, etc.
I think that's something we should definitely talk about before we end this conversation. There are folks who are so uncomfortable with this idea of body positivity that they push against it.
Yeah, what do you mean? Yeah.
Well, I think about like the way people react to the Lizzo. Lizzo's out there doing her thing or whatever, and there are people are like, "This is unacceptable," and they try to approach it from this really kind of from a health stance.
Like
why are you celebrating this? Because this is not healthy. This is whatever, and not saying that, hey, it's more important. And this is like when you were sharing, Bernadette, I was thinking, this idea of resistance is futile. It's like, I am not making any effort to go to the gym and to do whatever. And so I had to get to a place where I loved what was going on here. Because I also believe that it does not matter if I go to the gym and all of a sudden I exercise and my body looks the way I want it to look. If I'm not right up here with it,
100%.
does not matter. So it's like when you were talking about the times when we looked like we thought we were supposed to look, I was miserable. I was not happy. There was no joy in my life. And so I've got to figure out, how do I balance these two? And I'm closer than I've been in a long time with it, because it's like I feel like all of a sudden once I let go of trying to look or feel like I think other people wanted me to feel, and I'm just happy with what's going on, and I'm in acceptance about where I'm at and where I'm supposed to be at. Like all of a sudden my body is kind of getting in line. It's weird.
I love that. Yeah.
That's great.
Could we go back to this idea of like unlearning? So what are maybe some of the things that y'all have had to unlearn, right? You were mentioning this for a little bit.
LouiLou, do you want to start, or are you asking me that?
Go ahead.
Both of you.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think having to unlearn this, like we talked about, the stereotypical being of who I think I should be. And having to really sort of throw that idea away. And when I see things now that are advertisements about, losing weight, getting on a diet, getting on the treadmill, all the things we do to punish our bodies because we think we should be a certain way, those are all the things that I'm trying to just remove from my sight, remove from my mind, remove it from my Instagram feed. If I get an ad on Instagram that says, oh, you can do lazy girl yoga, and it's like this fat girl, and then all of a sudden she's thin, I'm like reporting that ad. Fuck that ad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need that ad. Don't tell me that I can do lazy girl yoga. It's like the only the fat girl's going to do the lazy girl yoga. No, like I resent that, and so it's like those kinds of things. Like I have been actively complaining to the creators, to the advertisers. I'm like, this is not okay, and so it's like, I don't want those advertisers to cement those ideas even more in our minds that we are not okay, that we need to be different than we are. It's like, we already have enough pressure. We don't need those advertisers giving us more pressure. But of course they're going to, because they're trying to make money.
That's right.
I mean, the diet industry is insanely rich.
Yeah.
Insanely rich.
Yeah.
I do the same thing that you do. It's like I'm all about curating what I see. Because for me, like because of the things that I do, it's like it benefits me to be on social media in the way that I am, because I can use it as a way to reach folks that I wouldn't be able to reach. But I still need to decide what it is that I want to see. Like I will go through and I will actively, and it's not that I'm trying to kind of keep everything at bay, because there's still some things that, I want to be challenged, but there's some stuff, like you said, it's like, I don't need to see this. I'm not interested in seeing this. But I was going to point out, I've told this story before. It's like, I remember one day I was getting out of the shower and I wiped, it's all dramatic, and I wiped the condensation off the mirror, and I looked and I thought to myself, like, Louis, are you judging yourself as not desirable based on your skin, your color, you being a black man? And I realized in that, it's like, I need to stop judging. I need to block all of that out. I'm letting all of these images that are coming at me, I'm letting what they're telling me is desirable, determine what I think is desirable. I need to get away from that. And some of the little litmus things that I do is I think about, and this is a tough one. Sometimes I focus so much on what's not happening that I forget to pay attention to what's happening. That, it's like when you're in a situation and you think nobody wants you, but you don't pay attention to the people that you've already turned down. I was telling a friend, it's like, oh my God, this and that, or whatever. It's like, you're only concerned about the people that didn't want you, but you're not paying attention to the fact that you, like, 50% of the guys and we were talking about the sex club, but you were in a situation where all of a sudden it's like you're only paying attention to those few guys that said no, but you've had your hand up and nobody is getting in, and you're not counting those. And I have to, for me, the way that I stay sane is I'm all, so not everybody's, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and it's okay. And in the same breath, they're not my cup of tea, and maybe I'll find what I need to find. But it's like, that's just what I was thinking.
Yeah, what this is, just a while ago. So what comes up for me around this is, you and I, we know someone who, they're an older gentleman, and the long and the short of it is that his self-esteem was being really shot. Like, he's older, his body has changed significantly, and he had all this low self-esteem. And then what ended up happening is that he had sexual encounters with guys who were significantly younger than him, than he is. And it was more than one. And then that somehow then impacted his self-esteem. And there's something about that feels problematic to me. This idea that the self-esteem is reliant on whether or not you're fuckable. Like, just to be frank, and that, and what was interesting about that to me is that, like, what was coming up for me as I was listening to him was that self-acceptance was available to him even before he had sex with those guys, right? That a person can feel good about themselves, and it doesn't matter whether or not you are physically useful to someone else. And by use, and I'm putting it like delicately, right? Right. And I think the other thing that's kind of maddening is that beauty standards change over time.
They do.
Which is also very crazy to me, which is crazy making, because beauty standards change.
You do all that work to get to that one beauty standard, and then all of a sudden it's like,
and then it's different.
Yeah, I mean, like, during the Renaissance, like, it was in vogue to look older. Right, during the Renaissance, during the 1800s, it was in vogue to be in a bigger body because, and even during the Renaissance, because it communicated wealth. It meant that you didn't have to work, right? And so, and it had to do with what people lacked, right? And so, if people lacked the money to buy food, well, then they were thinner, and so they were not as attractive, right? It's an illusion, for example, that there are these kind of universal concepts of beauty. I remember I did research on this like years ago as an undergrad, and there are actually very few universal standards of beauty, and the ones that do exist, they're related to health, right? And so, for example, like complexion. Basically, anything that communicates like I don't have diseases is like considered like a universal thing. So, like, for example, like a clearer complexion, and it's not even like some abnormal complexion. It's just like the standard human face, right? Like anything that like doesn't look like communicating like some type of disease. So they're very, actually, like I said, very few universal things. And of the things are kind of like, everyone would just kind of like shrug their shoulders and say, well, yeah, of course, no one's going to be attracted to someone who's throwing up. Right. Like, right.
I hope not.
And that's probably a kink. I probably just shamed someone's kink somewhere.
I'm sorry if we young.
Yeah.
I know, exactly.
But the takeaway here is that beauty standards, they shift over time, and nothing is kind of like set in stone. And that I think by itself is actually quite liberating to consider.
Definitely.
Yeah. Did I just cut you off?
I just wanted to add on to what LouLou said. You know, I, as a white person, I have no idea what it's like to be in a darker skinned body. And I know that there's been moments where I thought, okay, I'm going to do this like litmus test. I'm going to Google search beauty. What comes up? 95% white blonde women. Mm-hmm. So it's like, even that, you know, the lack of diversity in the women's color, and then on top of that in their bodies, and there were no men that came up. Beauty didn't even define men as part of it, you know? So it's like, there are still so many factors that we could be way more inclusive about when it comes to quote unquote beauty. And I do find that, you know, more media is including more people of color, more body types. There's still a lot that's lacking though, too, Absolutely. You know, and there's a lot of representation that isn't there. So I think it's something else to consider.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you should bring up marketing and beauty, because you know what? So I have an MS in applied psych, and one of the things that I learned when I was learning marketing is that there's nothing, no human body is more marketable than a woman's body. Like mm-hmm. women's bodies, you can use to sell things to other women. You can use women's bodies to sell things to men. You can use women's bodies to sell things to children, right? Because ideas of like comfort and nurture, right? So there's and you know, and so the objectification of women's bodies is still very clear. And then I think that was the only. Oh, and then the other thing is that marketing in general, like the goal of all marketing essentially is to create a feeling of lack, right? It's like, you lack this thing, like, you know what I mean? It's like, you're unhappy until you're in this body. You're unhappy until you have this material thing. So there's nothing, I think I might have said this before, there's nothing more anti-capitalist or anti-capitalist than self-love and self-acceptance, right? Because if there's truly self-love and there's self-acceptance, there's no need to like take in extra thing. Like there's no need to really kind of consume extra things, right? Mm-hmm. But so with the last 10 minutes that we have, I want to talk about what are ways, like not practical tips necessarily, but what are ways that you cultivate self-acceptance and body positivity?
Well, I mean, I think, like I talked about already, I surround myself with, you know, media that I find is helpful and comforting. And there are women out there that look like me, and there are women out there that don't look like me, but it's like we are all sort of fighting that same battle against this sort of norm. And so I think that that's helpful, is to surround yourself with people who have similar thought processes as you know, have this mindset that there's no one right or wrong body, and to discuss that with other people, and to help other people to discover that in themselves and to think about it themselves. Because I think it's really, it's become sort of part of our, almost like our DNA, to question ourselves and to feel insecure and to feel like we're not fitting into some certain mold. And so even talking to other people about this and thinking and asking them why they think that about themselves, and to get them to question, oh, why do I think that? Who's putting those thoughts in my head? You know, and I think that helps other people gain clarity too. And it becomes more of a understanding in a community. And it's just not just like a few people here and there that are saying these things. So I find that to be really helpful. And like, you know, I made the pins. I looked for pins that I wanted and they didn't exist. So I made them myself, you know, and some people have really liked them and asked me if they could have one. And I was like, here you go, have it. Like, go, you know, like enjoy it. So, you know, just any little thing like that you can do, or that I can do for my own self acceptance and love. It's not always easy to have self-love, and I know when people say self-love, we can all get a little immature about it in our heads, but really it's really about just loving who we are. Right.
Absolutely,
and so,
absolutely.
but sometimes we're not there yet. Sometimes we need just self-acceptance. Sometimes we just need to feel neutral about our bodies and not say anything bad about it, and that's a good place to start, so I think there's a lot you could do. I mean, I could talk about this forever, but there are a lot of things you can do. I think really it comes down to deciding that you're worth it and that you are worthy of self-acceptance, and go from there.
Absolutely. I think that recovery has helped me so much in that I think for me, getting honest about how I feel and sharing that with someone, and not letting shame around how I feel and guilt about feelings, whatever, but really kind of talking about it openly and honestly with. And like you said, there are times surrounding myself with all of these different bodies, different types of bodies, and because I have been more inspired, motivated. Like when I meet someone who, I've met people who in my mind don't fit the idea, but they have this confidence and they have this strength and they have this, and I'm like, what the hell? what, where's that coming from? I want some of that. And
and you can have it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You absolutely can. Everyone can.
I think, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the beauty industry and the diet industry's worst fear is that people will start saying, I don't need all this crap to feel good about myself. And they're going to just start losing money. Could you imagine a world without beauty products and diets? I mean, my God, what would that world be like?
Right.
I was going to comment. It's like when I'm with my family, I was thinking, it's like, I complain about my weight and this and that or whatever, and I'm with my family, and they're like, you need to eat something. What's going on? It's like, you're this, that, whatever. It's
you
like,
never win. Yeah.
No, exactly.
I know.
No.
Well, I heard a share the other day that really blew my mind. There was a person who he was talking about how, I think you were there for this. He was talking about how when he first got sober, that he didn't feel very attractive. He felt like his life was falling apart. And then as he started working out and his body started to change and he started to get all of these things, people were going up to him and telling him how beautiful and how wonderful he was. And one of the things he said was, I needed that shit when I wasn't where I am right now. Right? That I didn't need someone to tell me that I was beautiful and I was valuable. I needed that when I wasn't feeling those things. And what I took away from that was that he was inherently valuable, that he was inherently beautiful. And so that has made me change how I think about how I'm showing up for people. Specifically, I have a no comment, as a general rule, I don't comment on people's bodies. I don't care if you lost weight or gained weight. I don't comment on people's bodies. For a number of different reasons. One of the reasons why I don't do it is because I don't want to reinforce a narrative that I don't agree with. So for example, I have a friend who's lost a lot of weight. I don't praise that person for losing weight,
Mm-hmm.
I'm working on that.
You know what I mean? It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I have to remind myself too.
Yeah. And so, it gets tricky too, because I do think that with my partner, for example, I tell him he's beautiful all the time. You know what I mean? Or if he walks into the room and he's naked, I might comment on some part of his body, but that to me feels very different. I don't know why I feel that.
That to me feels very personal.
Yeah. Well, it's sexy. It's fun.
Well, you know what I mean? I mean, what do you do? If you're with your partner, you don't comment, you don't praise your partner's body. I don't know. I just, and I don't care what body he's in. It doesn't matter, but the point is that I think he's beautiful.
I just messing with you.
Yeah, you do. You're a bitch. You. So yeah, that's,
well, and
in our next episode, we're going to talk about positive attitudes.
I won't be here. I'm going to be sick.
Oh, be sick that day. Okay, LouLou.
And the other thing I like too is that that the conversation isn't limited to bodies, right? Like, or like physical shape of bodies. It could be about height or like a nose or skin or race, right? Like that it applies to body positivity has to do with so many more things than just a person's weight or the shape of their body.
For sure.
Yeah. And I think the other thing I was thinking about here was, at least for me, and I got this from recovery, was esteemable acts, right? Like I feel the best about myself when I'm doing things that have nothing to fucking do with me. Right. Like, and I, like be it I'm helping someone like with their resume, or I'm sitting across a client. Oh, it looks like we might have a comment.
We have a comment.
Oh,
Anka.
don't forget Aging Bodies.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Anka. Yes. 100%. That's a whole other thing, right? Which is like the way when people age, how they become like invisible in the media. It's so fucked up. I mean, there have been some really cool things that I saw done with that. Like there's, those like the older fashionistas. Yeah. There was like a documentary.
Yes,
I love that. I love that.
More and more.
Yeah, and and I feel like part of that is very unique to, maybe not unique to the United States, but I know there are other countries, for example, where like they treat their elderly a lot better than we do, or like just older folks in general a lot better than we do. I think Dove even had a campaign for a while where they were doing that. So go ahead. What were you saying?
Oh, I just wanted to say too, because we were talking a bit about validation from outside sources. And I think a big part for me that has shifted a lot is that I have to constantly remind myself to look inside for validation. Don't look to other people. Don't think that my boss is going to give me a big old pat on the back for doing my job. No, I'm the one who needs to say, you know what? You did a really good job today. Or, you know what? You showed up for that and it was hard and you did it anyway. It's like, we have to become our own loving parents, because a lot of us didn't get that, right? And so our critics are so loud and they feed into that insecurity. And so if we can like center ourselves and come back and say, I did a really good job, I am proud of myself, then all the other stuff doesn't matter, because we've got that strength, and that strength makes confidence, and that confidence is so damn sexy, as we know.
Yeah.
Another, like, I think that it also, in addition to that, is like surrounding yourself with folks who are not negative. Like we were joking, like there are some folks who, like, whether they know it or not, that's how they show up. And like for me, it's like it's bad enough, like, if I'm telling myself that I don't need outside external forces reinforcing that. So it's like, come on, I have to lovingly love people. Like I was talking to my sponsor about this. I have to lovingly love people from across the street, because that's the only way I love them. It's like, I don't have the bandwidth. I can't. So I'm going to just let you do your thing over there. Yeah.
Yeah. The only other thing I would add is that, and it's so important that when a person is feeling in their power, right? Like when a person is feeling good about themselves, that it's not at the expense of other people.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's one of my issues with some types of drag, where like like there's the kind of like elegant, glorious drag queen, and now she's putting down everyone in her path.
Yeah. I think that's the reason why that I'm so loved, because I come for myself first, and then I come for everybody else.
Well, I mean, it's an art to like make fun, but for them to also be in on the joke, that's like
what has to be loving. It's I've always said, and this is the last thing I'll say. Like, I think that, like, for me, it has always been like, I am not going to attack something that I know is really an issue with you. It should be light and airy, and also we should have that relationship. Because if you just walk in the door, I've never met you or whatever, and I come for you, that's a problem. That's a problem. That's my issue, and I got to work through that.
Yeah, I think this is a quote I came across when I was, again, a teenager. It was something along the lines of like, true strength and true power is to have your own and not feel like you have to take it from other people, right? Like that is real strength, is when it's not kind of like at the expense of everyone else.
You're so smart. I love you.
And
I agree 100%.
Y'all are too sweet. So with that, we're going to start landing the plane.
The Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ barbecue recovery community.
We
That was good.
That was very good, Louis. We provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth.
Yes, and our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support.
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
And tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time when we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels. We're YouTube stars, you know that.
Find us wherever you listen to
100%.
podcasts.
Yeah.
Is that the music, background music?
Yeah.
Bernadette, you are a rock star. You are a natural.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you,
thank
Bernadette.
you.
That was really nice. We're still recording, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I get that. But are we not on video anymore? Or are we still?
Wait, yeah, we're not streaming.
We're not
So
live
right now it's
streaming.
just
Okay,
the audio.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but our producers, our behind the scenes people, they've been on top of it. So this episode will be up in no time.
Yeah. Well, you know what's crazy is that while we were all talking, there was a coffee spill behind. So there was like all this frantic stuff happening behind the scenes.
You guys were super calm. I didn't even notice.
I almost made a comment about how Brandon was on his phone and how Steven had spilled stuff.
Oh my God.
You guys were cool under pressure. It was good.
That was really awesome. I was like, oh, you know what? I feel like maybe we should have stayed with genitalia for a little longer.
We can talk. I mean, you could talk more about it.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it now. Well, I was just thinking about how genitalia is like a thing, like people talk about like breast size or dick size or ass size, and how these are like very sexualized parts of the body, and how, you know, a lot of people's self-esteem is like either wrapped up or fucked up because of these different parts of their body. And what does self-acceptance look around genitalia, which is very interesting to me because I don't feel like that's really a conversation that people have. Like you would have to do a kind of like incognito search.
Folks have to get past the shame. Like,
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah. Because it's like thinking of my specific body part or whatever. You know, I don't talk about this a lot, but it's not really a secret. I was a virgin till like later. I was like 25. I was 25 the first time I hooked up, which is, you know, realistic. It's not that bad or whatever. Anyway, but not knowing what was normal or what was acceptable or whatever, I was embarrassed, you know, when folks would talk about my appendage, because I was like, I'm not going to show you, number one. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to participate in this conversation. But I also don't have the information to say whether or not I'm okay or I'm not okay. And that was like a tough one.
That's so interesting. And I think part of that is because we don't have conversations about those things. So much of like what we learn about sexuality, we're kind of like learning and passing, you know what I mean? Either through experiences, especially in places where there isn't sex education or there isn't at least a sense of like sex positivity.
The people we surround ourselves. I was thinking about young people, the people who surround ourselves who know are cruel as fuck. You know, it's like, I'm going to judge you harshly, whatever. If you have, I'm going to judge you even more if you haven't. You know, I'm like,
yeah, it's interesting. There's this very kind of like, there's like this erotic discrimination that I haven't given it too much thought past what we're talking about, like right this second. By give it thought, I mean, I'm just thinking about like, oh, what are all the different kind of like variables that kind of come up for people when it comes to like sex? And of course, some of it has to do with like their body, feeling comfortable with their body. I think about like gay sex in particular, and how some people who, for example, if they feel like they're not very well endowed, they feel like they can't top, or like they feel, so the takeaway being that a lot of people that I know have regulated their sex based on like their perception of their anatomy, which is that to me is like, that's by itself is an entirely different conversation, right? It is body positivity, but it's also this like there's something about eroticism that changes the conversation a little
We
bit.
haven't even invited religion into this
Oh,
discussion.
right.
Yeah, let's not.
Yeah. Like we can't really do that now too. But
I know,
yeah,
it's like that's
a whole month.
I know.
That's probably a whole
I think
year.
Yeah, there's a theme for one of your months.
Yeah,
religion.
exactly.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Like the impact. Oh,
I
you know,
feel- I
why
feel
don't we,
like-
I'm going to
I
write
feel
that
like,
down.
I feel like Bernadette, you have to come back and
Okay.
join us in one of these conversations.
Definitely.
Because
I'm always down for more talking.
Yeah, no. My attitude is like I feel like I believe that like this conversation is like one of the conversations we might have to after a meeting, and so that uniquely makes all of us qualified if to come on and just have the conversation.
Yeah. You mean this conversation?
Any conversation,
Okay,
because number one, it's like I talk about all the time. It's like there are some conversations like I sit and I'm like, okay, I'm sitting, I'm going to listen, I'm taking it in. I don't necessarily feel like I am the expert, but I don't really need to be the expert. I need to just have the willingness to kind of have the conversation so that I'm not hiding, so that I'm not letting shame and guilt keep me from growing in my understanding and my learning about a certain topic,
Yeah. I mean, I think that just being open to it, is a big part of what we do. And I think we all kind of are experts. I know that's a hard word sometimes to express about ourselves, but we're all experts in our own lives. Like we've all had our own experiences. We've all grown up a certain way. Like, sometimes I look at someone else and I start to compare them, and then I remind myself, they had a completely different upbringing than I did. I am who I am because of how I grew up, a lot of it, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's sort of unpacking that and learning from it as we get older, right? So, yeah, we all have our own viewpoint. And I think that that's what makes it so interesting and so such a good conversation to have, is because we're all looking at it from different lenses. And that's spectacular. That's how we, grow and learn about other people and how they're seeing or having their experience.
Sorry, I just lifted up my ear because I heard this. I thought I heard like Celine Dion, not like she walked into the room, but I was like, "Is that Celine Dion? Is Celine here?" Like,
oh my God, Celine's here!
Celine, thank you for showing up. You're late, but thanks.
That's when you do the applause.
Yeah. Thank you, Celine. Yes.
The crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're done. Okay, so we should probably.
We're spiraling.
Thank you so much,
Bernadette. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. This was wonderful. I'd be happy to do it again. I'd love to do it in person next time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.